Well, good evening, Facebook. It's been a minute. Hopefully, I can even upload this because the neighbors, they have like an extended interference thing where they can connect to any device that's close by. I forgot the name for it, but yeah, and it's heavy because they keep grabbing it. That's all I hear every time they move it. And then they up the amplitude on it because I've been using my nice little aluminum. I have like 3 sheets and I had the phone in it, and then it was going good for a while, and then moved it closer and then upped the amplitude. So I have a horrible headache because they keep effing with me. It's really, I haven't got sleep well in over a month now. Anyway, I wanted to talk about targeted individual trauma, as we all go through it, which is ridiculous. And sorry, I took a shower, so my hair is up and I don't care. But basically, I don't remember being abused as a child. Obviously, a lot of it was kept from me. I mean, I was drugged as an adult and abducted and, RAPE'd and assaulted, physically assaulted, to the point like I would wake up and I'd have a black and blue eye, and I'd be like, where did this come from? Like they've done a lot to all of us. And what came to my attention is way when I was younger. So my older sister was born in Georgia. So now it makes sense why Atlanta, Georgia would be a place, or Georgia in an essence would be a place that my father was associated with because he was a Mason. And they probably were doing magic on my mother because at the time I think my mother was chosen for the calling, from Yahweh. Anyway, so my mother had my older sister Jess in Georgia, and then they moved to Germany, Berlin. My brother was born there. And then they moved to North Carolina, and I was born, my mother told me I was born like 6 months before they left. So after we left, I believe we went to Louisiana. And then after 3 years, that's when we went to Michigan, Detroit, and that's when Julie was born. But I guess something happened to me in Louisiana. Now, I had 2 dreams that I remember of. One when I was 4 in Michigan, Detroit. It was really weird and it was sexual. So it was probably my mind recycling the first time I was sexually assaulted. But when I was younger, it came to me later, because I knew we were in Louisiana, but I just never had any, I never had any memories of it. I remember a swamp, very specifically a swamp. Now this was a dream, okay? I remember going with my father to a swamp, and we were on a boat in the swamp, and we saw alligators, and we were fishing. And I don't recall ever being fishing. And so that was kind of the dream. Now, I also know that my half-sister, Alexi, she's 15 years older than me, okay? So when I was born, she was 15. When I was 2, she was 17. Now, I remember my mother telling me, Alexi always pinched. She always pinched us. When my older sister's 9 years younger than Alexi. So when Alexi was 9, Jessica was born. And sorry, my arm is all shaky. So Jess was born, and Jesus, I don't know why I'm so shaky. So anyway, Jess was born, and Alexi, I think, was just jealous because she's another girl, and she's different because Alexi is German. She's just German, German-Romanian, but predominantly German. So she's white. And Jessica she was light-skinned like me. My little sister and my brother later on got really dark, which was weird to me because my brother was a computer specialist and Julie was always inside at the restaurant working. So I was like, how are you guys darker than us. I don't know, weird. Anyway, so I know that Alexi was jealous of Jess. And then my mom told me that when Justin was born, my brother, she loved him. She adored him. And then when I was born, she went right back to the same behavior with like pinching me and stuff. Now, I know my father's a Mason, but I also know my half-sister, Alexandra, had a lot of mental and emotional problems. She would run away from home. She would lie and claim my mother was doing all sorts of things to her and stuff like that. Now my mother, because that was her child, when she got married to my father, she was very adamant and said, don't, I'm the one that disciplines my daughter, not you. But seeing as though my father kept it very hidden from my mother, or maybe not, maybe she just endured, that I was being, RAPE'd as a child and so on and so forth. He probably did this to Alexandra too. And my mother just didn't know. And, my mom, she tried really hard. And I thought it was really extreme because my mother was like, I sent her back to Germany. By the time I was born, she sent her back to Germany. And she was 15 at this time. So I think that was when she hit puberty and my father decided to probably assault her, sexually. And that is my assumption right now. Supposedly, now I talked about it to my mother and she never really said anything, but I think she was too afraid to, because she had to keep quiet, otherwise she would get beat. But I would tell her like the weirdest stuff that happens. I've had sleep paralysis. I've woken up where I feel like I'm being choked and it feels like somebody's sitting on top of me, just choking me. And it happened multiple times throughout my teenage years, into my early 20s. Now in my teenage years, around 13, 14, 15, that's when I started to see some weird stuff. Once I started praying to God, it was like the devil was right next to me, purposely, intentionally not wanting me to pray to God. And now I'm absolutely, now I feel like that is absolutely the truth. I remember I was just sitting there praying and all of a sudden, I mentioned it on another video, but I don't know if it's still on here. All of a sudden, like, I was in my room and I had brought a cup into the room for me to drink. And it was like a coffee cup, but I think I had like soda in it or something. And I was praying and then I heard the cup move and I turned and I told myself, no, that's my imagination. And I heard it move again. And I turned back around because I was kneeling on the floor facing the opposite direction, praying with my, my hands in, in prayer mode. And so I got up and I went to the cup and I was like, I was just curious because it was my room. There was nobody else. My brother wasn't in his room next door. Like nobody was around. And I was like, no, I'm just hearing things. And then I watched the cup as it fell off the desk and I backed up and I was just in complete terror. And I never told anyone. I told my mother, God, 20, almost 30 years later. Well, not 15 years. Let me say that. Around 15 years later, I told her. Because I was just like, what the, And going back, like I said, I had premonitions. The last premonition I had was when I saw my coworker die, and I knew exactly the time, how she died, like visually how she died, the cause of her death, everything, where it was. And I just asked not to see things like that anymore, and so God took it away. But going back to Louisiana, like I said, I'm a targeted individual, so I do know that I've been targeted. I know that I've been attempted to be suffocated. I've been strangled. I've heard it on audios of some of my RAPs, about how I was strangled and they're like trying to talk to me through it, how I was whipped, screaming because glass was thrown at me. I've heard a lot of what has happened to me. I think that there's a potential, because my father couldn't control me, but he never hit me. He beat the crap out of my brother. Anytime something went wrong, it was my brother was always the one, but he really was always the one. But I am under the impression that if it was my dad that supposedly tried to drown me, I don't know. Especially if something happened when I was 2. When I was 2, we were in Louisiana, so I really think that it has a higher potential of it being my half-sister, Alexei, because she was jealous of us. And my mother, to send her off like that, that was very not like my mother, to send her child off. Even after Jess tried to strangle her at 16, my mother would have never kicked her out. I don't believe she would have. My mom endured so much disrespect and BS and abuse. I think the most she would have done is not talk to her for a while. My mom was so enduring. She endured so much. And I hated it. I hated watching her endure. And it bred a lot of anger and hate in me. And to see my mother be the target every time bred a lot of hatred in me toward my siblings and my father. But that's what my father wanted. Anyway, I think Alexei would be the one that potentially tried to murder me first, probably the first one. And my father, I don't think I would have upset my father enough for him to have tried to do something like that. My father always was attracted to his daughters. I think always, even since younger. I think it would have been Alexei. And my brother, like I said, he was beat pretty bad. And we were turned against each other, even though we were like inseparable growing up until I was 13, and I was like, I'm done. The craziest thing is he's a Libra, and when you read his chart, he is the complete opposite. He is the complete opposite of his chart. I don't know all of the realities of the higher self and the spiritual realm. I don't know all of the trickster methodologies, but I'm starting to feel like there's something going on in this life on a higher level that I need to learn more about. And for the targeted individuals who understand about spiritual awakening and understand that, you know, the government chose us for a very specific reason. You know, we're not just anybody. We're irreplaceable. And we all have our own fascinating abilities. And our DNA is very interesting. But I just wanted to make a comment about my past. I've never been afraid of the water. I do have that. I don't like if I were to die, I'd rather burn to death than drown. Let's put it that way. But I've always swam Julie. I think my brother tried to do that to Julie. Julie was terrified of the water. Terrified of it. But I don't know why. And my dad never hit her either. So I'm to the point of I'm really confused. All I know is tonight is an important night. It's October 30th, and this human experience is not what I thought it was, and it's not what I want it to be, and I'm not content with it at all. And I'm not content with knowing that this is going to be my last life in the human experience, because it's a crappy one. It's a really crappy human experience. Can I have a better one, please? So, I don't know. I'm waiting to have the three-dimensional foundation to be able to explore the understanding of this better. I'm really annoyed with being breadcrumbed into understanding things, and also breadcrumbed into emotional responses. I hate the algorithm. I hate the concept of the development of transhumanism the way that it's going right now, which we are inevitably on the brink of, you know. But it is what it is. I guess all we can do is pray to God and pray for me that I'm strong enough to do what I'm out here to do, because it's big. And I'm not terrified, but I'm very doubtful that I'm capable of it. But at the same time, I know I'm capable of it. But this is big. And I would appreciate for other light workers to help pray for me in the process. Anyway, God bless you all. I pray for your protection. I pray for your elevation and your wellness. And I pray for mine as well.